Written by Trevor Sacks and set in the backdrop of apartheid South Africa in the 1980s, this book, Lucky Packet, tells the story of Ben Aronbach, a young Jewish boy, as he tries to navigate his way through the predominantly Afrikaans and Christian community in the conservative Northern Transvaal town. But then before I give away too much, let me now rope in Trevor into this conversation. And he joins us now live from a Seapoint studio in Cape Town. Trevor, very good morning and a warm welcome.
Good morning to you.
Let's start with where you got the idea to pen down this coming-of-age story.
I started writing the story while I was enrolled at UCT doing my master's, and the story really grew out of a character, Leo Fine, who's an older man who the main character, Ben Aronbach, really looks up to, but who disappoints him and betrays him in several ways during the course of the book. And it was really out of the idea for that character that the rest of the story started to bloom. So I drew on part of my own childhood, but really Leo Fine was the driving force behind the story.
Now let's talk about this misfit, Ben Aronbach. He is a Jewish English-speaking teenager in an Afrikaans-speaking small town. Take us through his journey in this book. Ben begins the story, he's 12 years old and he's about to have his bar mitzvah, the sort of coming-of-age ritual in Jewish tradition. And he comes from a family of outsiders because they're atheists in a town that's got a very tight-knit Jewish community, and the Jewish community itself is in this, as you said, very conservative, mostly Afrikaans Christian town. So he begins life as quite an outsider, and even within his family, he's struggling to find his place. He's without a father. And it's when he meets Leo Fine that things really change for him. And he looks up to Leo Fine. The first thing they do in the story is they rob a liquor store together. And for Ben, this is the most exciting thing that's ever happened to him. And his association with Leo brings him into contact with all kinds of dark forces, let's say, some fun and some not so fun. Yeah, Ben is thrust into association with the third force later in the book, ANC operatives, the ZCC, and all kinds of interesting characters who populated the region in the far Northern Transvaal around that time. So yeah, that's what happens between him and Leo Fine. And apart from that, he lost his dad when he was 6. His family was struggling financially. He goes through an identity crisis at some point, and then comes Leo Fine into his life.
That's right. Yeah. It's because of his missing father, I think, that Leo Fine is able to enter Ben's life and really kind of take advantage. I guess Leo Fine is really a con man, and he looks for a weakness, and he sees it in Ben, and it's an opportunity for Leo Fine to try and gain something financially from the family. And Ben, the book is a coming-of-age story, so Ben has to unfortunately go through all of these trials and tribulations to sort of find out who he is, and I think Leo Fine drags him along with him in his plots, and well, I don't want to give too much away, but hopefully by the end of the book, Ben finds out who he is and is able to stand up for himself a little bit more strongly.
And the setting, Trevor, for this story is based in the conservative town in Northern Transvaal. Talk to us why this was the best fitting town to center this book.
Well, I never name the town, although I do talk about it being far Northern Transvaal as it was then. And I do that because I want to take a bit of license with the facts, but I grew up in Polokwane, Pietersburg, as it was then. So the town was very familiar to me.
So I was able to draw on my own experiences growing up there. And back then, now it's of course completely changed, and it's a big bustling city. But back then it was a small town, a very white, conservative Afrikaans town, and the only town in the region in 1991 during the referendum to end apartheid to vote no. So that's quite telling, I think, about general attitudes, political attitudes in the town.
Sure, and you capture the South African history so beautifully in this book, and I would imagine the amount of research that went into putting this book together.
Yeah, I did have to. I mean, I lived through some of that, but I did go back through newspaper reports and so I did have to do a little bit of research, and the AWB also features, and they had quite a strong presence in the town and the region, and there were battles that went on between the AWB and the National Party that happened in the town hall, which I draw on, and of course there was a lot of political activity at the University of the North as it was then. And being near the border, it was also an area of focus for the government generally. But I don't think you could, even growing up as a white South African, fairly sheltered as we did in the 80s, you can't escape politics in South Africa. There was the state of emergency, and there's always talk of politics in town.
All right, Trevor, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Much appreciated. And joining us from Cape Town is author Trevor Sacks, and he's been speaking to us about his latest book, a political fiction here entitled Lucky Package.